the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps said it is ready for complete obedience and self-sacrifice in carrying out the divine commands of their new supreme leader.
Allies of President Trump are doubling down on support for the war in Iran, with South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham issuing this warning.
And we're going to win. Israel and the United States, you just wait to see what comes in the next 2 weeks.
The next 2 weeks meaning what?
We're going to blow the hell out of these people. This regime is in a death row now. It is going to be on its knees. It's going to fall. And when it falls, we're going to have peace like no other time. We're going to have prosperity unlike anyone could ever imagine. Peace brings prosperity. You can't do it by talking. The Democrats criticize this operation. They didn't do a damn thing. These men and women in the military should make us all proud.
Oh, that was Lindsey Graham. The threat has sparked speculation over whether the Trump administration is planning an escalation of the conflict. 7 US servicemen have been confirmed killed by the military's Central Command, as the death toll in Iran is estimated at more than 1,000 people.
At least 32 people have been injured by a drone strike in the Sitra area of Bahrain overnight, including children, the country's health ministry has said. Bahrain's defence force said it's intercepted more than 90 missiles and 150 drones since Iran started its airstrikes on the country. Bahraini General Command highlighted Iran is breaking international law and the UN Charter by targeting civilian sites and private property. That's the military and geopolitical context for the morning, but that has a real economic impact as well. The oil price has jumped to over $115 a barrel. The spike is the biggest single jump in one day in history. It peaked at $115. Last time Dominic O'Connell was on, I think it was $108, but it's still a significant rise. How worried should we be, and what can anyone do about it to protect their pockets? Simon French is chief economist at Panmure Liberum and writes a column for The Times that appears in the papers on Mondays. It's always worth your time to read that. And Simon joins us now. Morning to you.
Morning, Stig.
Trump has said that high energy prices are a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace, and only fools would think differently. Are you a fool this morning in that respect, Simon?
Yes, I'm a fool. And I'm happy to be a fool, because I think most people would look at the tangible impact on their lives and conclude that the impact of gas prices and oil prices, if they remain around these kind of levels, will mean a higher cost of your weekly shop, but it will also pass into other parts of the economy, food prices, construction prices, and then pressure to push up wages. And I think we've already seen, haven't we, in terms of the expectations for interest rate cuts this year, which started the year with 2 interest rate cuts. They're starting to be priced out completely.
And I think Don was telling us that every time the oil price goes up more than $10 a barrel, it moves inflation by a fraction of a percentage point. But the problem is, I think, as we saw with Ukraine, was once you start an inflationary spiral, everything gets more expensive, which makes everything else more expensive, which means inflation goes up and up. And there's a risk there that you don't just get up 1% point of inflation, you might get 5 or 6 or more.
I think that's a really important point. What you get is the first order impact probably within 4 to 6 weeks at the petrol pumps in terms of oil prices moving, and then the transmission through the supply chain is pretty quick. And then you get a second order impact on other energy costs, and the household energy price cap is updated on the 1st of July. So potentially midsummer, you get a second bump based on sustained high prices particularly in gas markets. And then, if you like, a third bump, which is the rest of the economy, all repricing their cost of labour, their cost of raw materials, through construction, through manufacturing. And so you almost get 3 waves of this at distinct times. And therefore, yes, the sustainability of that cost of living squeeze is not just the initial shock, but is the follow-on impact through the economy.
Do we need to look again at North Sea oil and gas? Because the case is often made against that by saying that we sell that on the international market. It wouldn't necessarily guarantee ourselves more of a supply. But you've been writing in the paper today that you think it's still worth looking at.
Well, thank you for referencing my column this morning. I think the point I was trying to make is the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, is right that the UK's production of North Sea oil and gas doesn't impact global prices. We're just not significant enough in that regard. But what it really, really does is it impacts the value of the pound, fiscal balance in the UK, so tax revenues from North Sea oil and gas, and also our balance of payments. And all of those things translate through to the cost of living. If I give you a small micro example, if the value of the pound, which has been under pressure really since the start of this Middle Eastern conflict, goes down, then imports of things that we buy every day, most obviously food, but other manufactured goods from outside our shores, become more expensive in sterling terms. So while, yes, Ed Miliband is right, first order, it doesn't impact the cost of living, it absolutely does through the transmission of things like the value of our currency.
Is the green revolution, the green agenda, is it strength? We had Steve Reed on talking to Kate about 40 minutes ago, and he said this shows you why we need more renewables. We need more renewables. That's what we're trying to do. Is what's happening in the Middle East an argument for that, or is an argument that at the same time as that goes on, we need to be looking at fossil fuels in the short term?
The latter. I don't understand why we, as a country, continue to ration elements of the economy, and in this case it's energy, but we could talk about land, we could talk about capital, we could talk about the things that get into running businesses, generating growth, generating prosperity, and we decide that we want to ration certain parts of it. And I really get rather frustrated by the idea that no one is saying we should go slower on renewables. I don't want any more carbon in the economy than the next person, but in the short term you cannot deploy these things quickly enough in order to meet energy demand in the UK. So I think, if you like, a pluralist approach to energy is what is desperately required right now. It has an impact on the cost of living, but it also has a quicker supply side response than building out things like nuclear, offshore wind, where the lead in time is more significant.
How worried should we be about cost of living crisis? It's a phrase that's kind of lost meaning, because once you have a cost of living crisis 4 years ago, and then then there's another one the next, it's the same one a year after a year after a year after. It can't be a crisis if it's happening all the time, which is what it feels like. It's been a phrase that's been sort of sullied by overuse almost. But is there a danger it could be coming back, it could be getting worse?
Can I try and on Times Radio launch a new phrase, which is the cost of living? What was the? Oh God, I've forgotten now. We've got a lack of resilience. So it is a there you go, vulnerability.
Vulnerability, that's good.
Yes, cost of living vulnerability. What we end up having is a series of shocks where the UK looks like it is vulnerable to the impact of rising interest rates, rising inflation. If we reduce our vulnerability, then that cost of living crisis, which you're absolutely right, loses meaning, goes away or gets diminished because we have more resilience to when these shocks that affect all economies hit us. The UK isn't always on the front line of having the biggest negative impact. And
actually, we live in a world where the shocks are going to keep on coming. We've got a guy in the White House, for example, that's likely to be shocking things for 3 years to come.
Absolutely. So you build more resilience. And there's an opportunity for the Chancellor when she delivers next week her second May's lecture laying out her economic strategy. This is a successor to Securonomics. And of course, Securonomics had intellectually that idea of building more resilience, having less vulnerability. But the world has, even in the 2 years since the Chancellor gave that speech, it has changed. And unfortunately, some of the resistance to building resilience and reducing vulnerability are within her own party, are on her own backbenches. So I'd argue the economics is pretty clear right now. The politics is far from clear.
Simon, great to speak to you as ever. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Simon French, their chief economist at Panmure Liberum, and it's a really interesting and quite prescient column about North Sea oil and gas, which is in the paper today.